9 months ago, I sat in an emergency room on suicide watch. I felt numb to everything except for the weight of loneliness. I had no idea why I felt this way or why everybody around me said that I was toxic. Without knowing it at the time, I was the living, breathing definition of toxic masculinity. I grew up sheltered in Mitchellville, Iowa. I went to church, school, and worked on the farm. Although mom and dad in the front row might argue about how much work was actually done. My whole life changed when I picked up a basketball for the first time. To be honest, I hate sports. I never enjoyed playing or watching them, but my family didn't have money growing up, and I knew that if I wanted to go to college, I'd have to find a way to pay for it. And I found out by complete accident that apparently you can get your college paid for by the game of basketball. And I was watching Michael Jordan's last game. I was 7 years old, and the salaries of the players popped up on the screen. And I turned to my dad, and I'm like, Pops, why do these dudes make so much money? And he said, because they were good at basketball. And I saw this silly game as an opportunity to rewrite my story, to get out of Mitchellville. So I started going to basketball camps. I tried out for travel teams and spent an insane amount of time trying to dunk a basketball like Mike. By the time I was in 8th grade, I was recruited on a national level. I became obsessed with the game, and it was really easy to hide behind that number 4 jersey. Deep down, I knew that I was a bisexual boy who was terrified of anyone finding out that I was bisexual and hated sports. So I covered it up with what I perceived to be masculine traits. I wanted to be just like the other good basketball players, so I studied them. I saw how they acted, and then I mirrored their behaviors. I tried my best to grow a beard, wore as much Nike and Jordan as I could, and even serial dated girls, all in hopes of masking my bisexuality. In the process of hiding my identity, I lost myself. My behavior started to shift when I was a junior in high school. I started disrespecting everyone around me. I was a good enough athlete that I saw nothing wrong with how I was acting. And honestly, in my perception, I was rewarded for it. I was all state. I was setting records. I was in the paper. I had made a name for myself. But nobody ever talked about the real Scott. They only talked about number 4 because that's all I let them see. I accepted a scholarship to the University at Albany in New York. Getting out of Iowa sounded like a dream to me. And it was a dream until right before I left, I received a call from my girlfriend at the time. She told me that she was pregnant. I remember that call. We were scared out of our minds. In my mind, I had to maintain this profile of masculinity, so I acted strong. In hindsight, I acted like I didn't care. I did care, but I was filled with so much fear. And I couldn't let anyone see that emotion. My perception of what it meant to be a man was that vulnerability equaled weak. So I suppressed anything that would make me appear as weak. I didn't tell my parents, my brothers, my friends. It was a dark secret that I just wanted to go away. I called one of my coaches and told him. He said that having a child would be harmful to my basketball career. And while the decision was hers and hers alone to make, it was pretty clear coming from an adult the advice that we should take, and we knew no better. She drove to Missouri with money that I stole from my parents. She had an abortion. I felt so much guilt. I was living a lie. I was so afraid of being exposed for being bisexual, for hating sports, for being smart. And my toxic masculine behavior had reached a point where my fear had taken priority over a child's life. I didn't know how to process or communicate what I was feeling, so my response became substances or running away. I moved to New York, dropped out after 3 days. I know that we need to be statistically correct on stages like this, but that has to be one of the shortest-lived Division I basketball careers out there. And so I moved back to Mitchellville because it felt safe. and I needed to feel safe at that point in time. And after a few months of working at a car shop in Mitchellville, I received a call from Marty Bell, the head coach at Quincy University. He said a player on his team quit in the preseason and he had a scholarship for me. Literally anything in the world sounded better than sandblasting rust off of cars for minimum wage. So I moved to Quincy, my act followed me and just continued to get worse. I was trying to numb my pain, to cover up what I was feeling inside, to stay hidden behind that number 4 jersey. My time at QU can pretty well be summed up by several points: drinking, drugs, sex, stealing. I was broken. No one knew the real me. I didn't even know myself. I'd reached a dark place where I stopped caring about everything. I started shoplifting on a regular basis. I was drinking during class to get through the day, and I was crying myself to sleep almost every night. And I wish this is the part of the story where it gets better, but it didn't. In April of my sophomore year at QU, I was arrested on felony retail theft and aggravated battery charges. I was 20 years old. Mom taught me how to be smart, but I walked into Quincy Walmart wearing a QU basketball shirt as if in 2014 the Quincy Police Department didn't have the capability of Google searching QU basketball and see me on the website. So my friends start calling me, the cops are on campus. I had to turn myself in, and I spent 3 days in jail. It broke me. And this was a wake-up call. I made some real superficial, fake-level changes in my life. I did everything I could to just be this clean-cut model citizen. I was lying my face off. I was a fraud. Now that basketball was done, I was hiding behind a new costume of public speaking. I would travel all over the state of Iowa speaking. I would share my story of how I made all of these positive changes in my life. I was lying my face off. Behind closed doors, I would realize that I needed to listen to the words that I was giving other people. And I was disgusted with myself, but instead of changing my behavior, I just blamed everyone around me. Of course, nothing could ever be my fault. All of my feelings of depression, anxiety, and guilt were centered around being closeted. All of these emotions that I had suppressed for 27 years finally got too heavy. I completely isolated myself from the world, and the loneliness grew to a dark place mentally. I wanted to kill myself. Lying in that emergency room bed, I was faced with a decision. I could either be honest with myself and others about who I really am, or I could continue hurting and projecting that hurt on everyone around me. And I chose to feel better. After checking out of the emergency room, I signed up for therapy, got on some antidepressants, and started being purely vulnerable with those around me. I came out as bisexual the week after. It felt like I let out a breath that I'd been holding my entire life. While I'm new to this whole journey of loving myself, I'm getting better at it every single day. One of my favorite ways to manage the hard days is by writing poetry, and I wrote this a while back. When we refuse to learn, we refuse to grow. When we choose to learn, we choose to grow. And this growth showed me how to love my genuine self. Prior to therapy, I didn't know what toxic masculinity meant. And then I learned. Maya Salam of the New York Times lists the traits of toxic masculinity as suppressing emotion or masking distress. Check. Maintaining an appearance of hardness. Check. And violence as an indicator of power. Check. I checked all the boxes. But instead of guilting or shaming myself, I decided to have a conversation with myself in the bathroom mirror. And that conversation started with, hey dude, I love you, but you're being gross. And I had finally reached a place in my acceptance where I realized that my problems weren't anyone else's fault. My problems weren't toxic masculinity's fault. My problems were my fault and were a result of me projecting my insecurities about being bisexual onto other people. I finally faced what I was running from, myself. After all, you can't outrun your shadow, so why not get to know your shadow a little bit better? As I got to know myself better, I started to write. Whenever I would feel sad, depressed, anxious, or stressed, I would write down what I was feeling. And then I started noticing patterns. And once I noticed patterns, I would think about what was causing them, and then, guess what? Crack the code. Now I'm much more capable of thinking about, processing, and communicating what I'm feeling to other people. And it's important to note that I didn't just come up with these tools to process emotion in healthy ways. It took work, hard work, sometimes really, really uncomfortable work. But it taught me how to be comfortable in my own skin. My first week of therapy is literally the best example of getting out of my comfort zone. My therapist most likely got tired of hearing me complain that I had nothing to do for fun. I'd spent so much of my life doing something that I didn't love doing that at 27 years old, I genuinely did not know what my hobbies were. And of course, that was not a good enough excuse for her. So she's like, what's something that you enjoy doing? And I'm like, well, I just got a new iPhone. My old one got stolen at Jordan Creek Mall at the food court last week. So, I've enjoyed taking pictures on this new iPhone. And she's like, go buy a real camera. Next morning, pull up West Des Moines, buy a Canon T6i. I'd never shot with a camera before. And I had a blast on my first day of shooting. I walked over 12 miles throughout Des Moines just taking pictures and having conversations with strangers. But there was one interaction that left a permanent mark on me. I was wheeling down a grocery cart full of some stuff for the houseless homies, and I met a man named Hector. He told me that he was a boxer from Philly, that life brought him to Des Moines, and he's sleeping on the street. He took one look at my camera and asked if I was any good, so I took his picture and asked for his opinion. He gave me a hug, and through his tears, he said that interaction made him feel more human again. And I will never forget the next line out of his mouth. He said, you should give these away for one hug, bro. And that inspired me to start giving away photo shoots for one hug. And in a way, photography truly has helped save my life. It helps me see the beauty in everything, things that I would otherwise miss, almost like I'm looking through a different lens. It introduced me to new friends, some of which I see here today. They hold me accountable, they believe in me, and they love me, and I love them. My life has certainly been a wild ride, but everything got much more simple when I realized that I was in charge of my own amusement park. My hope for this community is that we gain a greater understanding of what toxic masculinity is. As men, we have a responsibility to be aware of our emotions while also being aware of how we project those emotions onto other people. And here's a crazy idea, maybe we hold each other accountable on these things as men, we would hold each other accountable to pull up at the barbershop or pull up at the gym or pull up at the Y to play some hoops. Crazy idea, but I think it might work. Thank you. I've been a lot of things in my life. A convict, college athlete, college dropout, college educator, shout out DMU. Y'all changed my life. And even in December, I finished a 4.0 Master's in Education program. But my favorite thing is being able to look myself in the mirror, stare toxic masculinity right in the eye and say, I love you, but you're being gross.